All right, ladies and gentlemen, you are Locked On Falcons. I am your host, Aaron Freeman. And today we are talking more about the crazy, unfathomable idea that the Falcons will take a wide receiver. And I'll touch upon why it still doesn't make any sense to me that the Falcons would do that in round one, as well as react to the pre-draft press conference from Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith and whether or not they sort of let slip some preferences in terms of what types of prospects they may be looking for in this year's draft.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So, guys, you know me. I'm Aaron Freeman, been covering the Falcons for many years, formerly at FalcFans.com, RIP, still going strong on Twitter at FalcFans, and of course, the host of this world-renowned Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, as part of the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast family. And today's episode of Locked On Falcons is brought to you by Blue Nile. This Mother's Day, give mom something that she'll treasure forever with fine jewelry at BlueNile.com. And Locked On Sports listeners get $50 off $500. Use promo code Locked On at checkout. So, guys, I want to thank everyone that makes Locked On Falcons their first listen each and every day. Of course, Locked On Falcons is free and available on a variety of podcast platforms, including Apple, Odyssey, Google, Spotify, YouTube. You know the spiel. You can get the video version of the podcast by subscribing to Locked On Falcons on YouTube. Hit that bell icon. You get that the night before the audio version of the podcast drops. And we are now on day 3, the third day of the 12 days of draft miss, referring to the 12 days of daily content that you will get here on the Locked On Falcons podcast, as this is a very busy time of year for me, because you will get weekend content with reactions, post-draft reactions to whatever the Falcons do on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of this upcoming draft. So I hope you guys appreciate all the hard work and the lack of sleep that I will be getting this weekend, trying to give you the best content possible. And we'll start this third day of draft miss by complaining about this notion that the Falcons may take a wide receiver. And this is sort of continued to be a prominent topic among NFL insiders. You know, Peter King put out his mock draft on Monday, having the Falcons take a wide receiver. Todd McShay has been talking about the Falcons taking a wide. I mean, basically everybody at ESPN has been pushing the wide receiver at 8 mantra since February. They have been firmly locked in on the notion that the Falcons are going to take a wide receiver over at ESPN. And I said it before. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to keep saying it. It is just inconceivable, unfathomable that the Falcons could take a wide receiver at 8. And no, like, I don't think it's the best player available. You just cannot convince me that that's the case. The one player that you could potentially argue could be considered the best player available at that 8th overall selection is Alabama wide receiver Jamison Williams. He's the one exception in this draft class at the wide receiver group that I think you could legitimately justify taking in the top 10 of the draft. He has that sort of game-changing speed, that game-breaking speed, the type of speed that, you know, keeps defensive coordinators up at night during the week trying to game plan against, and it's virtually impossible to game plan against. And you know how valuable I perceive that because of my focus on explosiveness. Last year, you heard me saying basically as early as September, hey, the Falcons need this type of player in their offense. That's why I was pushing for like Marvin Hall and John Brown and all those guys. So Jamison Williams is the one guy that is intriguing as a potential Falcons fit. But as I've said many times before, the fact that he's going to miss most of the season and redshirt this season, if not all of the season due to that ACL tear, to me, I just don't see the point of drafting him, because while he is intriguing in terms of his skill set isn't like unique or that rare. I mean, it's not common. Don't get me wrong. There aren't people that can run like him. That, you know, they're not growing on trees or anything, but it's not as if like you get this type of speed like once every 4 to 5 years. I mean, Alabama's produced basically the exact same wide receiver 3 years in a row in Henry Ruggs, Jalen Waddle, and Jamison Williams. And again, I don't know enough about Alabama's depth. Go check out Locked On Bama or whatever the case may be, or Locked On SEC to get more insight into that. But I'm pretty I'm going to go out on a limb and say they probably have another guy that runs like a 4-2 on that roster that, may or may not be available next year. So I don't feel like it makes a ton of sense that if you're not going to get the immediate value that Jamison Williams is going to bring on the field, you can just wait a year and get basically, and get somebody who can do the same thing next year. And he's going to bring just as much to the table as Jamison Williams would theoretically. And then after Jamison Williams, it's like, to me, my next best wide receiver is Drake London. And I just don't think Drake London is on that level that's worthy of a top 10 pick. Like, I don't think he's Mike Evans, guys. He's not 235 pounds, right? He's pushing 220, but he's more Kenny Galladay, he's more T. Higgins, he's more Michael Pittman Jr. And those guys were all day 2 selections. And I think you can certainly make a case that Drake London may be a little bit more polished, a little bit better than some of those guys were coming out, but that doesn't make him a top 10 pick. That makes him a late first round pick, right? I think Higgins and Pittman were taken like 33 and 34 overall in their draft. So at the very beginning of round 2. So like, if you're sitting here telling me that Drake London's like maybe 10 spots better than them, that's 23rd overall. That's Arizona's pick or something like that's where he should be picked, not 8th overall. And so I just continue to not understand why it's considered a priority from a lot of folks, and certainly from the Falcons standpoint, that it's a priority to add a complimentary pass catcher when they can't just basically do the basics, right? We need to be focused on the basics, the fundamentals, the foundation of the roster, not trying to get weapons. Like in a world where Matt Ryan was a quarterback, in a world where the Falcons has successfully traded for Deshaun Watson, we'd be having a very different conversation about the value and meaning and the importance of having a wide receiver, because you would have checked off the most important box on your offense. But until you check off that box at quarterback, the thing that you need to be focused, I'm not worried about who our quarterback, whoever that guy is going to be, Marcus Mariota, Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder, CJ Stroud, or what. I'm not worried about who he's throwing the ball to. I'm worried about, can he hold up? I'm worried about who's protecting him, right? It's not about the pass catchers, guys. It's about the pass protection. That's really the problem that the Falcons need to solve for their offense, not throwing a whole bunch of weapons out there and thinking it's going to work. And we'll get into that a little bit further in terms of, because getting better in the trenches is going to help this team win football games. And I know that's not a priority to a lot of fans listening, but it should certainly be a priority for the people that are in that building making decisions, that they need to start taking strides towards winning football games. And we'll get into exactly what I think that's going to take by focusing on the trenches as we continue today's episode of Locked On Falcons. But before we get there, guys, I do want to let you know that this week, as the 12 days of draft miss are here on Locked On Falcons, there's 3 days of draft miss on the Locked On Podcast Network in terms of their live coverage, which begins Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern time on Facebook, on YouTube. Just search Locked On NFL Draft Live, and you will find pick-by-pick analysis. You'll see local experts like me reacting to the picks. Certainly, if it's a wide receiver, it will not be a positive reaction on that live show. So definitely check out Locked On NFL Draft, just for the hope that Aaron flips out on live television on Thursday night. So find that by searching for Locked On NFL Draft on Facebook, on YouTube, all your live apps. And guys, as you go through this weekend, being obsessed with the draft and neglecting your loved ones because you're glued to the television watching the draft, next weekend's going to be a big weekend. It's going to be Mother's Day, and you're probably going to get that special gift for that someone, given that you neglected them all April long by being too obsessed with the draft. And it can be tough finding that gift. And I think the jewelry experts at Blue Nile can help you, because they're available 24/7 via phone, via chat, so that they can find the perfect fit that fits your budget. So make this Mother's Day memorable and celebrate that special someone with something enduring, like diamond earrings, elegant tennis bracelets, birthstone pendants, and so much more, available at BlueNile.com. And you can easily navigate through thousands of fine jewelry options at every single price point. This Mother's Day, give mom something she'll treasure forever with fine jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Falcons listeners get $50 off $500. This podcast exclusive is only good through Mother's Day. So use the promo code Locked On. That's code Locked On, LOCKEDON. And plus, Every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. So shop stress-free and find your forever peace by going to BlueNile.com today. So when we talk about this Falcons team and what's going to help them win games, and you go back to last season, right? The biggest problem with the Falcons offense last year was their offensive line. You know, I don't get why we're pretending that, it was a real big problem when teams were double teaming Kyle Pitts last year, and that really slowed down the Falcons offense. Like, no, it didn't. Like, did y'all not watch Russell Gage get over 600 yards in the last 8 games of the season? That's Russell Gage, guys. It was a 6th-round special teamer, right? Like, sitting here acting like you can't find guys that can be halfway decent options. Again, like, I know, like, finding a Russell Gage is not ideal. It's not like it was sort of, that's what you plan to do, but like, you don't need to go out there and get all these dynamic weapons, because what is that changing? Because last year the problem was they couldn't keep the quarterback upright. The play calling was vanilla and conservative, right? And the hope is that it's not going to be as vanilla and conservative. And the reason why that Arthur Smith was so conservative with his play calling, because he knew if he threw the ball on 1st and 10, that they were going to give up a sack, and they would put in themselves in 2nd and 15, and they would just dig a hole that they couldn't get out of, right? Why is that? Because the offensive line, not because, he didn't have enough weapons to throw the ball on 1st and 10. It's because they couldn't hold up in pass protection. So I'm baffled by this notion that, like, we need to get another weapon. We need to get a complementary weapon, a tag team partner to Kyle Pitts. No, we don't. I don't get that. Right? We're not equipped to win shootouts, guys. Like, that only is going to help you win shootouts. This is not a team that's winning shootouts. Right? We're years away from that. You know, I've heard so many Falcon fans be like, look what the Chiefs did. Like, the Chiefs, you're comparing the 3-14 Falcons that's probably going to happen this year to a team that's like 14-3, and you're like, look what the Chiefs did. Like, we're years away from that, guys. I don't get it. Right. And I know our fan base is like, who cares? We're going to stink this year. Right. I'm with you. Like, I think they're eye level in terms of win totals, like 3 or 4 wins. But, don't ever let anybody tell you that we're never positive on this podcast. So I will say it's 3 to 5 wins. Right. With just a little positivity to introduce into your life. Right. But I know a lot of fans are like, we're not going to win anything. So who cares? Right. And I'm not going to sit here and convince you that, hey, if the Falcons don't take a wide receiver, that player is going to help this team add 2 or 3 wins this season. No, of course not. But you need to start chipping away at your problems. And you need to start focusing on what's going to help you win games, not only in the future, but now, right? Again, no high expectations that this team is going to be good this year, but you need to start making progress in the areas of the roster that you need to make progress, so that eventually, when you do have the talent to start winning more games, you can do so. And again, fans have the luxury of basically like, who cares? I want them to tank all that stuff. Let's go CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, whatever. The worse they are this year, the better. Fans can think that way, but if you're in that building, you can't think that way. You need to start putting together game plans that are going to help you win games, right? And again, I don't think it's going to result in a whole bunch of wins this season, but you need to start implementing that. And so let's look at their schedule this year, right? We know that we face the AFC North, the NFC West, the Chargers, Chicago, Washington, of course, the NFC South. Let's look at the bottom tier teams on the Falcon schedule, right? Teams like Pittsburgh, Chicago, Seattle, Washington, Carolina, right? We know that those teams do not have high-level quarterback play. So you know what those teams are going to do in their offensive game plans? They're going to run the football, right? And so we know if we want to beat those teams, if we want to stop them from doing the things they want to do on Sunday, we need to be able to stop the run. And you also know what's going to help the team beat those teams, slow down those offenses, is when you know you have bad quarterback play. You know what makes quarterbacks even worse? Pressure. Not telling you guys anything you don't already know. You can take a bad quarterback into a terrible quarterback by putting pressure on the quarterback. You take a great quarterback and turn them into an average quarterback by putting pressure on the quarterback. And you're going to need that because you're not going to get high-level quarterback play. I know there's this sort of revisionist narrative that, like Marcus Mariota is actually really good and he's going to be great this year. And I'm just like, again, nothing against Marcus Mariota, guys, but like, why are we sitting here pretending that Marcus Mariota is going to do anything different than what Matt Ryan did a year ago? That we're, like below average quarterback at best, right? When we see Mike Sando's quarterback tiers come out later this summer in July, usually before training camp, like my guess is the best case scenario for where Marcus Mariota is going to rank on that is 25th. He's going to be a bottom 8 quarterback, right? So you're not going to win a lot of games with a bottom 8 quarterback, guys. So your best case scenario is to make the other teams even worse than bottom 8, make them bottom 2, bottom 3, or whatever the case may be. You need to get pressure on the quarterback. Then let's talk about the mid-tier teams that we're going to face. Teams like Cleveland, Baltimore, New Orleans, San Francisco, Arizona. Teams that are consider themselves playoff teams, but probably or maybe a few steps away from being Super Bowl aspiring teams. You know what those teams are going to do as well? They're going to run the football, guys. I know it's weird hearing the Saints are being a run-first team, but that's what they are. They finished top 5 in the league in rushing last year, and guess what? They were top 5 in the league, regardless of Trevor Siemian, Taysom Hill, or Jameis Winston as a quarterback. They're a running football team. Cleveland's a running football team. Baltimore's a running football. Arizona, San Francisco, all these teams run the football. And when you face these mobile quarterbacks like Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson in this tier of team, you better have some athletes in the middle of the field, in the middle of your defense, like a linebacker, that can keep those mobile quarterbacks in check. I don't know if the Falcons quite have that. I know that may be a controversial statement given some of the speed that they have at the position, but historically some of those guys have not been great spying quarterbacks. And so that's why you hear me say, I want to get more front 7 pieces, because we need to get some guys at that linebacker position potentially that can do that job. Or, maybe you get Kyle Hamilton to do that job as a safety, whatever the case may be. Right. And then, of course, you have the top tier teams, right? The teams that are Super Bowl contenders, or at least people think they are. Cincinnati, Chargers, Bucks, Rams, etc. Right. We know those teams ain't going to be worried about running football, because they know that they get into a drop back passing game. They have to throw the ball 40, 50 times a game. They know they can win those games with their quarterbacks. We're not getting into a shootout with those teams, guys. And the only way that we're going to slow down those offenses is by pressuring the quarterback. Again, all 3 defensive problems we know stem from the Falcons front. Address the front. Get players in the front. So that I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. Now let's talk about the offensive side of the ball, right? Because again, it gets back to the conversation. So the Falcons aren't going to win any shootouts with these teams, guys. They have the superior quarterback play. They have the superior weapons. I know that's part of the reason why people want to get a wide receiver. We need to get more weapons, but they're not going to win that way. Even if you put a good weapon on this team, they're not winning that way. Their game plan going up against these opponents is not going to be, let's throw the ball 40 times a game. It's going to be, let's run the football 40 times a game. Let's control the clock. Let's keep those better offenses, those better quarterbacks on the sideline. We need to control the line of scrimmage, guys. That's where the Falcons need to make improvements. And again, I'm not trying to sit here and tell you that, hey, if we draft Jordan Davis, if we draft Jermaine Johnson, if we draft Ike Ekwonu, whoever, with that 8th overall select, it's going to magically solve that problem. But you got to start chipping away, guys. You got a bottom 8 quarterback. You have a bottom 3 running game, bottom 7 offensive line, according to PFF last year. The worst pass rushing in the NFL, a bottom 3 run defense. Wide receiver is not solving any of those problems, guys. Wide receiver is a 3, 4, 5 year problem away. When you do have a quarterback, when you have addressed the offensive line, when you do have a defense, then you can start worrying about getting Kyle Pitts a complimentary playmaker, getting another wide receiver that when teams double team Kyle Pitts, we can make them pay. Getting that playmaker that in the 4th quarter, when you've been able to keep the game close and within 1 score, now you need to go down the field, drive the length of the field and score the touchdown to win the game. Because you've been able to keep it close with the Cincinnatis, with the Baltimores, etc. We're years away from that, guys. Worry about the wide receiver in the future. Plus, not to mention, again, wide receiver is one of those dime a dozen positions. The demand will never exceed the supply. Right? These other positions, trust me, the supply is not always exceeding demand. Wide receiver is not one of those positions. So I sit here and I say, you got to chip away at these other problems. You got to focus. These got to be the priorities for you, not a wide receiver. I'm not saying ignore the wide receiver position. I'm not saying that, but I'm sitting here going like, it's not a priority, man. And if you're going to take a player in the top 10 of the draft, this guy's got to be a cornerstone piece of your offense or your defense. This is a cornerstone piece that's going to help you win these football games, not a luxury pick that you're hoping you can line up the other 15 things in a row and draft the quarterback next year and solve all these other problems, the run game, the trench problems, the defensive line issues in free agency. And then that wide receiver will start to pay off for you 3 years from now. You got to start chipping away at this stuff, guys. So again, I express the opinion. It is unfathomable. It is inconceivable to me that the Falcons will consider taking a wide receiver at 8. Doesn't make sense from a best player available standpoint. It doesn't make sense from a need standpoint. You're just drafting a pass catcher to be what? To continue being a finesse team that we've been for a decade. We see that has not led to anything, guys. I know people will sit here and say, well, we should have won the Super Bowl. Well, we didn't win the Super Bowl. Why? Because we got our butts kicked in the trenches by the Patriots. We couldn't get pressure on the quarterback when the Tom Brady dropped back to throw the ball and they were putting together 15-play drives, right? We couldn't protect our quarterback when we needed to go down the field and score points and move the chains and possess the football, right? So I don't get it. We'll leave it at there. I'll save, this is the groundwork, me laying the groundwork for Friday's rant episode. If the Falcons do decide to do the unthinkable and take a wide receiver and continue to be a finesse team, we sit here and we kill Thomas Dimitroff for all his terrible decisions. But meanwhile, our fan base is signing off on, like, I hope Terry and them make the same terrible decisions. I don't get it, but we'll leave it at that. And we'll wrap up today's episode talking a little bit about some of my takeaways from the press conference, the pre-draft press conference from General Manager Terry Fontenot and head coach Arthur Smith. And I felt like, they said some interesting things. They don't give away a lot in these pressers, but they said some interesting things that I think may, confirm some thoughts that I've had previously on, how they'll evaluate and value certain players at the top of the draft, potentially maybe, tells us a little bit of insight into how they view and evaluate quarterbacks as well. So we'll get into all of that as we continue today's episode, guys. But before we get there, we do want to plug the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast family, where you can find 3 shows covering all of Atlanta and Georgia sports. It's A to Z with Mark Zinno, Hitting Hard with John Chuckery, and ATL Day Ones with Tanitra Batiste and yesterday's guest, Jarvis Davis. You will see all those folks on Locked On Falcons. You will see me on those various shows, of course, over the course of the summer. So check out Locked On Sports Atlanta, find your favorite show, or check out all 3 on your preferred podcast platform or as well on YouTube. So guys, about Built Bar. It's a protein bar that tastes just like a candy bar, even better than a candy bar, because not only do Built Bars taste good, they're good for you because they're low in sugar, low in calories, low in carbs, high in protein, high in fiber. And Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, and that also includes their new granola bars. Again, Built Bars all have been about that candy bar, but now they're about that granola bar, and you can get them in a variety of flavors like white chocolate berry, chocolate peanut butter, and chocolate coconut. And you're getting, healthier versions of granola bars. You're getting a lot less sugar, a lot more protein, and for comparable amounts of calories that you would get in any other granola bar out there. So go try a mixed box of the Built granola flavors, or you can get a mixed box of the puff flavors, the first protein infused marshmallow, or you can get a mixed box of all the tried and trues like the coconut almonds and salted caramel and all that stuff that you guys know and love that is offered at Built Bar every single day. So head on over to built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. So last little tidbit we'll talk about is just reacting to the press conference from Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith. Again, they're not giving away anything when they talk about this, but 2 things stood out to me, right? The first thing is, so they were asked a question about, do they value the floor or do they value the ceiling of players a little bit more? And Terry Fontenot's answer was more that he kind of values the high floor players because he believes that, if you have the player with the right makeup, that's going to give him a higher floor. That's going to allow him for them to bring them into the building, develop that player, and therefore he can reach that ceiling. So they're looking more for the higher floor players. And, that kind of confirms what I've felt along. We'll see how it manifests itself in the draft. But that's part of the reason why when you've heard me be hesitant to believe that the Falcons would take someone like a Kayvon Thibodeau versus, someone like a Jermaine Johnson, should one or both of those guys be there at the 8th overall spot. And I've felt like, they'll probably prefer Jermaine Johnson over a guy like Thibodeau because, I think Johnson has maybe that when we talk about the quote unquote makeup, right? He has that makeup that I think the Falcons are more looking for. And, again, whether you buy into the whole quote unquote attitude or personality issues with Thibodeau, again, I can't tell you how to feel. I don't know the guy, but it just seems like a lot of people in NFL circles, he kind of rubs people the wrong way. And that was reiterated in some quotes from like various coaches, that Bruce Feldman put up on The Athletic over the weekend. And it just continues to be a thing, regardless of what you feel about the player. It just feels like to me like Johnson is more the Falcons type of guy than Thibodeau is, but we'll see. I mean, they may not be in a position to draft one or both of these guys at the 8th overall selection. As you heard on Monday's Mock Draft Monday episode, I projected Johnson to be the Falcons pick at 8, but there's been some rumors that the Jets may, be willing to pull the trigger on a guy like Johnson at 4. Right, all these teams picking ahead of the Falcons need pass rushers. That's the one commonality between every single team picking ahead of the Falcons, with maybe the exception of the Panthers, just because they already have like Brian Burns or whatever the case may be. And, they have bigger issues at quarterback and left tackle. But the Giants, the Jets, Houston, Detroit, Jacksonville, all these teams are looking to upgrade their pass rush. And it could lead to guys like both Johnson and Thibodeau being off the board by the time we get to pick number 8. Which then opens the door for the Falcons to take a quarterback. And the other interesting tidbit that came out of that presser was, Arthur Smith talked about, the things that he values in a quarterback, and he kind of stressed accuracy and decision-making as the two areas that are hard to fix, right? The other areas, presumably, of quarterback play are areas that, you can either work around, say, like arm strength, or, you can work on improving, like mechanics and all those various things, pocket presence, etc. And so, that just continues the Carson Strong, Kenny Pickett brand that, we express here on Locked On Falcons. When I look at, accuracy, decision-making, the two quarterbacks to me that stand out in this draft class that check both of those boxes, at least at the highest levels, those are guys like Kenny Pickett from Pitt and Carson Strong from Nevada, that I think in that regard. And those are two guys that, are quote unquote traditional quarterbacks, but we'll see how that manifests itself in the Falcons, scouting process. Again, I still feel like Desmond Ridder is the guy that they would love to get, but it's going to be hard to get Desmond Ridder if you're not willing to take him at 8, because there's no guarantee that he's going to be there, at the end of round 1. Like on Mock Draft Monday, I had the Falcons trading to 32 to get Desmond Ridder. But again, you hear a lot of scuttlebutt that the quarterbacks are not going to go as high as people have been projecting them these last couple of months, where we're going to get like 2 or 3 quarterbacks going in the top 10, like some people think. You do wonder about Seattle, and they've been linked to various rumors recently about they really like Desmond Ridder. But, they picked 9th behind the Falcons. They also have 2 picks ahead of the Falcons at 40 and 41. So if the Falcons, if Ridder falls out of the top 10, then presumably the Falcons are going to have to get ahead of Seattle to get him at the beginning of round 2. That's why they would have to trade up into round 1. So we'll see how it all plays out. Again, no one knows how this draft is going to go. That was another tidbit from Terry and Arthur's presser that is like, we don't know. We're just figuring out, just like the rest of you guys. I'm sure they have a little bit of a better idea than you or I have on how this draft is going to play out. So it's going to be a fun Thursday night. It's going to be entertaining. There's going to be some craziness. And hopefully the Falcons just are just by the book, normal, just taking, good players, Jordan Davis, trench players, Kyle Hamilton, offensive linemen, pass rushers, like it's wide receiver, man. It's just like, what are we doing here? What are we doing, guys? I get why our fan base is like, hey, well, we just need good players. It's like, yeah, but we also need good players that are going to help us win games at some point. You got to start chipping away at these problems, right? In a world where Matt Ryan was still the quarterback, we could talk about taking a wide receiver. Like I said, if Watson was a quarterback, we can certainly have a conversation about taking a wide receiver. But you got to start fixing these problems, man. You can't just be like, hey, man, let's take a wide receiver, and it's not going to solve any of the problems we have on our team. It's not going to help us at all. Doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm letting it go. We'll save it for Friday. So tomorrow, I was trying to get a guest for tomorrow. Don't know if I'll be able to swing that on tomorrow's episode, but we'll see. That will be, I guess, the final preview before Thursday night. So let's see if I can get a guest on here to give their thoughts on it. Or else I'll just rant some more. I don't know, guys. So I appreciate you for tuning in for another episode of Locked On Falcons. If you want to provide your feedback, tell me why I'm wrong, why I'm right on this whole wide receiver issue, what you heard or thought of from Terry and Nim's press conference. You can hit me up on Twitter at Locked On Falcons, Facebook at Locked On Falcons. You can send an email to lockedonfalcons@mail.com. Of course, you can leave a comment here on the Locked On Falcons YouTube channel, guys. And if you want to get more insight into all the latest rumors surrounding this upcoming draft, of course, check out the Locked On NFL Draft podcast, where Eric Crocker and Ryan Tracy are giving you the lowdown on all the latest involving the NFL draft. And of course, you can find Locked On NFL Draft free and available on all the same podcast platforms you make Locked On Falcons available on: Apple, Odyssey, Google, Spotify, YouTube, etc. So guys, check them out as your second listen, and I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Falcons your first listen. We got 8 more days of draft miss coming up, so appreciate it, guys. Till then.